Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to our second edition of Breaking News for this Wednesday, the 15th day of May, 2024. And as always, new stories have come across the wire in the last few hours that we need to know about. So let's get to them. We find out that the Chinese Communist Party are significantly funding the anti-Israel protests on American campuses. The Nakba commemoration in Israel sees fiery counter protests by Israelis. Defense Minister Gallant calls on Netanyahu, calls him out for not having a plan for the day after the war is over. And Egypt's relationship with Israel is hitting new lows, but we know Egypt will never join in any final war against Israel because the Bible tells us so. All right. Every day, though, the news seems to get worse for Israel. Let's look at the stories. Number one, headline: Major report uncovers Chinese Communist Party linked influence behind left-wing anti-Israel protests in the USA. Now, this is not surprising. This is from Breitbart, by the way. A report reveals that key radical left-wing organizations central in the current anti-Israel and anti-American protest movement are significantly funded and influenced by a network tied to the Chinese Communist Party, which seeks to advance a revolutionary anti-government, anti-capitalist agenda. We could add anti-Christian too, threatening U.S. internal stability. A major report from the Network Contagion Research Institute, the NCRI, published Monday details how the Shut It Down for Palestine movement, which has connections to the Chinese Communist Party through the Singham Network, uses protest and media campaigns to push anti-American and anti-Israel narratives and significantly contribute to social unrest. Again, we are not surprised by this. Prominent groups within the CID4 peak, it's called coalition, are linked through financial, personal, and ideological ties to Communist Party associates Neville Roy Singham and his wife Jody Evans, the report notes, and it gives a little history of each of these. Singham, a former consultant for Huawei, has been involved in the Chinese Communist Party operations, has been investigated by the U.S., Canada, and in India. He is known for funneling hundreds of millions of dollars into pro-China progressive advocacy through his network. His wife, Evans, a co-founder of the radical left-wing anti-war organization Code Pink and board member of the People's Forum, has been actively involved in anti-American, anti-Israel protests, it reveals. Okay, like we said, anti-American often means anti-white and anti-Christian. We are lumped together along with Israel as the problem, not the solution. This fits well with the predictions of Scripture, where we read in our book 25 Signs We're Near the End, both the Christians and the Jews will be persecuted at the time of the end. And by the way, if you're not familiar with our resources, 25 Signs We're Near the End is a free download under the heading of Bible Prophecy on our website, Educating Our World. All right, headline number two: Nakba commemoration at Tel Aviv University ignites fiery counter protest. Now, Nakba is basically takes place the day after the Independence Day in Israel. It has the meaning of something like disaster because the state of Israel was formed as a disaster to those who hate Israel. And so you have the Nakba commemoration. Well, they let it go on at Tel Aviv University. Students waved signs reading "Get out of Gaza" and Rafah, and "No democracy with occupation." Counter-protesters argued freedom of expression isn't freedom of excitement. Student activists held a rally at Tel Aviv University on Wednesday morning to commemorate Nakba Day, which prompted a counter-protest. And again, the students affiliated with the Arab-Israeli political party Hadash waved signs reading "Get out of Gaza," etc., etc. Now, these are really hypocritical words, since the Arabs have been offered a state next to Israel at least 5 times in the recent past. No peace, no acceptance of Israel. That's it. When you read the comments, through the years, we will not talk to Israel. We will not negotiate with them. We will have nothing to do with them. We're going to try to rid them out of our, sphere here in the Middle East. And it's been horrible. And so the fact they say we free Palestine, well, again, they've had offers, like we've mentioned before, to have a state, a Palestinian state, yet they've never taken it because they don't want that. They want the whole thing. They want Israel out. Now, again, sign 7 of our 25 signs. We're near the end. Fits well here. There'll be a continual search for peace in Israel. Now, this next headline is rather disturbing. Defense Minister Gallant demands Netanyahu to take decision on day after in Gaza. The PM hits back, need to eliminate Hamas first. "I won't agree to Israeli military rule in Gaza," Gallant declares. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant kicked off a potential political crisis this evening in Israel, Wednesday evening, as he savagely attacked Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu over his lack of decision regarding the governance over the Gaza Strip after the war. And if you've been with us, you've been noticed that Blinken, Biden, and others have said, "What are you going to do after the war? What are you going to do the next day?" And Netanyahu always says, "We've got to take care of Hamas first." Anyway, during his first press conference in some months, the Defense Minister Gallant stressed he would not allow an outcome where Israel would continue to govern the Gaza Strip after the war. He would not allow it. Remember, Gallant was fired previously by Netanyahu and brought back, and he seems to think he's going to have the last word on this. He charged that he has been raising the issue repeatedly since October, and no alternative solution has been presented so far. The day after Hamas will only be achieved with Palestinian entities taking control of Gaza, accompanied by international actors establishing a governing alternative to Hamas rule. This, above all, is in the interest in the state of Israel. This is from Gallant. Indecision is, in essence, a decision. This leads to a dangerous course which promotes the idea of Israeli military and civilian governance in Gaza. It would become the main security and military effort of the state of Israel over the coming years. The price paid would be bloodshed and victims, as well as a heavy economic price, Gallant continued. I will not agree to the establishment of Israeli military rule in Gaza. Israel must not establish civilian rule in Gaza, the defense minister stressed. Turning directly to Netanyahu, Gallant demanded the prime minister to make a decision and declare that Israel will not establish civilian control over the Gaza Strip, that Israel will not establish military governance in the Gaza Strip, and a governing alternative to Hamas in the Gaza Strip will be raised immediately. The defense minister added that Israel's leaders must make tough decisions, even in the face of possible personal or political costs, echoing accusations made by critics of the prime minister that he was preventing a hostage deal for political reasons. Now, of course, Netanyahu is going to fight back, and he did. He said he wasn't ready to replace Hamastan with Fatahstan. Hamastan, again, that's what he calls Gaza. Hamas leading it. Fatahstan with the Fatah, that's the Palestinian Authority. There would be not really a dime's worth of difference between the two. In a video statement he released the same evening, this evening, the prime minister in the past said several times he wouldn't allow Fatah, which is the largest faction in the Palestinian Authority, to take over the Gaza Strip. The Biden administration has called for a new PA, Palestinian Authority, to take over the reins in the enclave after the war. As long as Hamas remains intact, no other party will step in to manage civilian affairs in Gaza, certainly not the Palestinian Authority. And here's the problem. 80% of the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria support the terrible massacre of October 7th, Netanyahu said. The PA has governed the Palestinian population centers in Judea and Samaria, internationally known as the West Bank, since the Oslo Accords in the 1990s. They support terror, they educate for terror, they fund terror. And so the first condition for preparing the ground for another party to eliminate Hamas, and to do so without excuses, the prime minister said. In other words, this is no difference if you put the Fatah or the Palestinian Authority. Following the statement by Gallant, who was temporarily fired by Netanyahu last year for his lack of support for the government's judicial reform, several coalition members publicly condemned his statements, in fact, called for his firing too. Israel now, this is again fitting with Scripture. Israel's confused leadership will continue according to Scripture, eventually making a pact with the final Antichrist, Daniel 9:24, when they think they will finally have peace. And we developed this in two different places. First, in our book, 25 Signs, we're near the end. Sign 14, the world will desperately look for a leader. Then we have an entire book on the subject, the final Antichrist, the coming Caesar, which deals with this and many other situations regarding the final Antichrist is coming into the world and what he will do. And again, free download on our website, Educating Our World. Now, finally, our last story is interesting. Israel said to fear Egypt will halt Hamas's mediation role as ties hit a new low. Officials said Cairo is using the humanitarian situation and blockage at Rafah crossing to build international pressure on Israel to end the war. Negotiations have focused on putting in place a ceasefire of several weeks that would increase humanitarian aid to Gaza and see the release of hostages, of whom 128 are still in captivity, some believed no longer alive. Israel has insisted that no matter what, it will continue the war until it achieves its goal of destroying Hamas. Senior Israeli officials fear Egypt may cease mediating between Jerusalem and Hamas terror group regarding a Gaza truce and the hostage deal, and warn that the military and intelligence cooperation between the countries will be harmed if the current crisis continues. This is according to the far-left Israeli daily newspaper Haaretz. The Tuesday report came as Israel and Egypt accuse each other of hindering the flow of aid into Gaza, after Cairo said Sunday it will join South Africa's genocide case against Israel in the International Court of Justice, and after Egyptian sources threatened that a planned offensive in Gaza's Rafah would endanger the 1979 peace accord between the two countries. And so they've threatened this. They've had a peace accord since 79. They said if you go into Rafah in a huge offensive, that might endanger this peace accord. Okay, the current situation, as one person put it, vis-a-vis Egypt, is the worst it's been since the war began. One unnamed official was quoted as saying. All right, so Egypt has not warred with Israel since 1973. It signed a peace treaty in 1979 and has a long history in both the Bible and in secular history. Now, here's something we know. That's why it's good to know the scripture. We know they will not turn upon Israel at the time of the end or join any coalition in a battle against them. They're conspicuous by their absence in last days battles. So this thing will pass over. Scripture has them conspicuous by their absence at the time of the end. So let's sum up what we've talked about in this second edition of Breaking News today. Okay, again, as always, we find evil forces such as the Chinese Communist Party working against Israel through their support of the college protest. And at the same time, the Nakba protest today again tried to make the Palestinians the victims. The leadership in Israel continues to fight among themselves with no clear answer as to what to do once Hamas has been neutralized. Like we said, there are no good options. And though Egypt has a strained relationship now with Israel, we know that they are not part of any last days warring against the Israelis. Thank the Lord that he has showed us these things in his word. Indeed, we do not need to be ignorant of things to come. And that's why we do this program every day. 1 Thessalonians 4:13, Paul says, brothers and sisters, I don't want you to be ignorant or uninformed concerning the future. And that's why we do Breaking News. I'm Don Stewart. Thanks for watching. See you again tomorrow morning. Until then, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.